Hi and welcome to TOTECS. In the 18.0 and 18.1 TOTECS e-commerce platform releases, we've added a number of enhancements and settings to provide more control over how users' passwords are validated, as well as the minimum number of characters that are required for their login IDs and their security answers. Not only this, but we've also added the capability to show, as the users are setting passwords and security answers, how valid their passwords and answers that they are setting. This ensures that users are protecting their credentials from any malicious third parties that could try to guess the passwords using common known passwords and password phrases. Within any project on the platform, in its administration center, administrator users can now specifically set the minimum required character length for login IDs, for the passwords, and the security answers, as well as indicating the number of numeric characters, special characters, lowercase and uppercase characters that must exist in passwords set by users within the user registration content managed web page area, as well as within the user details, favorites and orders content managed web page area, where users can also update and change their password. As well as when administrators change a password for a user, where these validation rules for passwords are also enforced. To see an example of this within our demo content managed website that we have hosted on the platform, if a user navigates to a web page that contains a user registration area, after entering their details, already we can see there is now the ability to embed a message that informs the user if they have not set the minimum amount of characters for their login ID, which may also be the same as their email address. So as the user types, once the minimum number of characters has been met, we can have the validation message disappear or reappear if they don't meet the requirements. For this particular project, we've set the minimum length to be at least 6 characters long, but in the future it may be good to increase this character length, since the longer the login IDs are, the harder it is for malicious third parties to guess the logins. And it is the same true for when setting the password. So we can elect to embed a number of different messages, from showing if a password strength is weak, medium, or strong, indicating that it meets all the minimum requirements. As the user types, we can set up messages on those characters that they need to enter into their passwords, and the number of characters, such as special characters, uppercase, lowercase, and numbers. Naturally, if we also set these minimums to be more of these characters, it is less easy for malicious third parties to guess the password, but it also means it's harder for the user to create a truly unique password. For administrator users, coming up with the balance of these numbers is important. Over time, these numbers may evolve as security changes in the future. The last part, when the users are entering a security question and security answer, there is the minimum amount of characters that the user must set within the security answer text field. Now, once a user has registered or been created by an administrator and given their login IDs, once they log in, if they navigate to a web page that contains the user details, favorites and orders area, the same password strength validation can be embedded within that area as well, and the same for the security answers. If an administrator logs into the administration center and clicks on the users menu and then clicks on the search users and finds a list of users, in the change password, the administrator user will also need to match minimum character lengths for the passwords as well. If they get it wrong, you can see there will be an error message where the password is not considered a valid password. So this ensures administrator users are also setting stronger passwords for users. To set this up, if an administrator logs into the administration center of a project, then clicks on the user's navigation menu and then clicks on the general settings, there are 7 new settings that are now available. So we can set the minimum length that a login ID should be. So we could increase this from 6 to 10 if we wanted to make it harder. And the minimum number of characters a user's password should be. So we could set that to 12 to make it very hard. Then we've got these 4 settings to control the number of numeric characters, so that's numbers that need to be in a user's password. The number of special characters, so that's non-alphabet and non-numeric numbers, so think of dollars, star symbols, ampersands, hash characters, those type of characters that we need to set, and the number of lowercase letters that we need to set. So that's letters from A to Z in the lowercase form, and the number of letters that must be set within the uppercase form. So we can adjust these numbers to be stronger or weaker depending on how we feel the strength of the passwords will be. The bigger the numbers here, the harder it makes for the user to set a password, but the harder it also makes for malicious actors to be able to guess the user's password. So it's about finding the right balance. And additionally, the last setting controls what is the minimum amount of characters that must be set for the user's security answer. Once we have set these values and click the Save button, if we go back in a separate web browser and refresh the page that contains a user registration area, we can see that those numbers will automatically update within the messaging if we're using the placeholders that are available in the area's formats. And the same is true for logged in users when they navigate to a user details, favorites and orders area, where those minimum character lengths will be now enforced as well. And it is true within the change password dialog within the administration center's search users, where we can now see that those settings will be now enforced. Now, besides that, if we go into the users menu and go to the user registration profiles, if we click on the name of a user registration profile, under the mandatory registration fields, there is a new field here called enforce password validation. So if this is set to mandatory, when the users fill out the registration form, if their password is not long enough or doesn't have the minimum amount of characters, this is the message that will display advising the user that they need to change their password. Such as the case if I've left a weak password in the registration form and click the submit button, you will see that the message that appears to the user is based on the message that has been set here in this enforce password validation registration field. So we can change that messaging to however we want, but note you can see that there are system setting format hooks available here, so we don't have to hard code the minimum password character lengths, and that allows that message to update dynamically when users fill out the registration form. If this setting is left disabled, then when the user submits the user registration form, it will not validate the user's password. And the only reason why you do that is typically if the user is not going to be active after initially registering, and in that case, an administrator user might validate the user first and set them a new password before allowing them to log in. Otherwise, it is highly recommended to have this setting set to enabled. Within the user registration area, to set up the validation messages for both the login ID, for the user's password, and for the security answers, within the administration center, if we click on the websites navigation menu button and click on the content manage websites menu item, within the websites interface, if we scroll down to the web area format libraries, then expand the user registration tree node, then within the user registration area, if we then expand the user registration form format within a new or existing format, if we edit the format, there are a number of additional format hooks that are now available. So to display the login ID validation message, we need to implement 3 format hooks called login ID, char count valid element ID, the class name, and the char count minimum length format hooks. And we need to put the ID and class name format hooks into a div or an element, and that will be used to control whether it hides or shows itself. And the class name is also used to control the colors that this message could appear as. So we may not want it to appear red, we may want it to appear as orange, or it could be in black. We can use the class name that this hook provides in order to do that. And we've also got this hook where we can set the minimum character length, so we don't have to hard code it in the message. It will come from those user settings to control what that value has been set as. And it's a similar story for the password. There are a number of format hooks that we can see here showing the minimum amount of characters required for the lowercase, uppercase, and special characters, as well as creating element IDs for each of these and class names to be able to hide or show those elements, so that when the user starts typing, those divs can hide or show themselves automatically. We have the format hooks available to be able to show whether or not the password strength is weak, medium, or strong. So we have the ability to change this text. We may not like the word medium. We could change that to be less weak if that made more sense to the user. Or we could use a word such as good and best for those words to describe the password. So this is where we can set that language. Once again, we can use the password validation strength element ID and password validation strength class name to control which of these inner divs should hide or show using these CSS classes that we have available called password strength message weak, medium, and strong. And finally, for the security answer, to set this messaging, it's a very similar story where we use the format hooks that are available that start with security answer char count and the element ID and class names to be able to hide or show that security answer validation message. So once we've got all of our format hooks set up, in a separate CSS file, this is where we would then control how the styling should work for this messaging. So if the passwords are strong or the fields are valid, we can set it to hide those messages using this as display CSS styling rule. If they're not valid, we can choose the color. So in this example, we just just keeping it very simple as red, but we could have other styling, such as instead of red, we could have a different color, or we could style it to have backgrounds or borders or icons to make it more indicative. And for the strengths for the password, where it's weak, medium, and strong, we can set up CSS styling, control those colors as well. So typically you'd put all these styling rules into a CSS file. You would not embed it in the format like for this demo, since that allows the page just to load faster, and we can use the same CSS styling across multiple areas. And the pattern is very similar for a user details, favorites, and orders area. So back within the website's administration center interface, if we expand the user account management within the user details, favorites, or orders area, if we go down to the user detail form for an existing or new format, when we edit it, we have very similar format hooks, starting off with password new, and then we've got our validation strength element IDs and class name hooks, as well as the individual element ID format hooks and class names for the validation of the character lengths in the password itself. And for the security answer, it too has the format hooks that are used to control whether or not that message should hide or show, and the length that the security answer should be. And as I was saying, ideally you'd be reusing the same format hooks, since it's the same class names in both users registration area and the user details, favorites, orders area to control the styling of the messaging within both those areas. So this shows you the new settings that we've added to the TOTECS e-commerce platform for all projects to allow administrator users to control the minimum lengths required for the login ID, for the password, and for the security answers, as well as the number of numeric, special characters, lowercase, uppercase characters required in a user's password. These settings provide additional flexibility to be able to change the security password policies now and into the future, as well as it can make it easier for the users to be able to set passwords when they know what those policies are, when they're both signing up and creating new user accounts, or they're updating passwords in their existing accounts. Ultimately, this is to reduce the chances of malicious third parties being able to guess a user's password, gain access to their user account. If you wish to find out more documented information about this feature and all other features in the 18.0 and 18.1 TOTECS e-commerce platform releases, if you go to the TOTECS.com website, click on the forums menu. Within the help menu, click on the forums. If you navigate to the releases forum, within the TOTECS platform release 18.0 and 18.1 release notes, you can find more details about this functionality and all the other enhancements that are included in those releases. Till next time, have a good one.